And welcome, folks, to the talk show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David. And, folks, we got a great show today. We're going to talk about the deportation of a MS-13 gang member. We're going to talk a little bit more about the freezing of all the funding for DEI and the green, supposedly, idea to change to. So if you ain't got nothing to do, folks, call your friends and let them know. You're listening to Let the Truth Be Told Radio. I'm your host, Pastor David. Now, come on in. And we're here. Thank you. Folks, I want to welcome you to the show today. We got a great show. But first, let me give all praises to God and my Lord and Savior, Yeshua, who is resurrected this week. And we're going to be experiencing Resurrection Weekend. In other words, for those who see it as Christmas. I mean, that's Easter. Well, folks, we got a great show. Let me open by saying this. To the American people and patriots across this country, we are in a rebuilding stage, not only psychologically, but physically here in the country. And there's a lot of things that's going on now that there's been a lot of exposure of the government and those who have been taking and stealing money and lying, those who have been using the system against what the Constitution say with the immigrations. And as we continue to watch how President Trump is cleaning up this country, we can see the clear pushback on those who supported all the open borders, the lying, the cheating, the stealing. We can see now finally who the real enemies are of this country and of this government. So to the American people and patriots across this country, let us not get sidetracked by some of the stuff that we see, because there are going to be distractions as we see. There's going to be situations that's going to happen that they're going to try to do to divide the American people. So to the American people and patriots across this country, all of us are citizens of this country. And we should be looking for the best for our country, even for our children. So let us not, we know this for a fact that we're going through a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear mongering by those who have gotten caught stealing, and they don't want to see what President Trump is doing. But to the American people and patriots across this country, this is what's been needed. We needed to know exactly where our taxpayer dollars have been going to. We needed to know why departments of education who got millions and trillions of dollars, and our children are being graduated as illiterate. So we need this house cleaning, very much so. So in saying that, let me get my co-host in. Hey, Doc, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. You know, I wanted to kick the show off a little bit about, we've been talking a lot about here in the state of Illinois about DEI and how it has affected our country and how it has made our educational and even our employment system weak. So President Trump has continued to make moves so that he can find out where all the waste, fraud, and abuse is going. I want you to talk to our listeners about a little bit about this DUI, because he just froze all of the funding, federal grants, loans, also to the Greenpeace grants and all of that. So give me a few thoughts about that, and then I'm gonna cue this clip up so we can show our listeners and viewers exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I know some of that freezing, and thanks for having me on, is coming from their lack of wanting to, number one, take men out of women's sports. And there's also some other federal guidelines that he said, okay, these are the things that you need to do in order to get funding. And I think for a lot of the institutions and even states, they think that, okay, well, you don't have the power to do that, but he actually does, because it falls under his purview. It falls under his budget. You know,
Right.
as much as we scream and cry as a general public, hey, save money or don't waste our money, right? And I think that's a big thing that Doge has found. This is a part of it, right? And all they have to do is say, okay, we're not going to put men in women's sports, and you'll get your funding, or whatever other circumstances they're saying that they need to comply with. It isn't anything that isn't creating safety for individuals. That's all I'm saying. They would rather put people in an unsafe position. Now, hear me clearly.
Yes.
We would rather put you in an unsafe position
Mm-hmm.
and lose money and not get any federal funding than actually protect you. So my whole thing is, what is actually going to happen? Okay, so you don't get the funding, fine, but the children that are, because they still are children going to some of these colleges and institutions, what's going to happen to them? Not only their physical safety, but their mental safety.
Well, you know, Doc, it's exactly, absolutely ludicrous to have a man and women's sports. That's just ridiculous. And it all came under this Biden administration and the Obama administration. That's the reason why we always go back to the people. We go back to the root of the problem. That's where the root of the problem went, because it's totally absurd for a man to be in a woman's sports. That's the reason why they separated in the first time, so that women could have their own sports, they can have their own bathrooms, they can compete against each other. That's just normal.
Yeah.
And so to the American people and patriots across this country, we saw this under the Obama administration, and we saw it under the Biden administration take flourish and take hold. And then these were all the different laws that they put into place behind the American people back.
Yeah.
Because when they used COVID, they didn't vote. They didn't ask the American people if they wanted homosexuality in the schools. That would have been a big no. Okay. Yeah. They didn't ask the American people if they wanted same-sex marriage to be a law. They didn't come to the American people. They didn't ask us that. You know why? It had to be subversive, because the American people would have denied it, and they knew Christians would have stood against it.
Yep.
So these are all the underlying and the underhanded things that the Democrats and the woke people did against us. Now, I'm not propagating any violence against anybody, but I'm gonna let the truth be told. It was wrong what they did. What you do in the dark comes to the light, and now that the American people see you, and now they're saying, hey, wait a minute, we didn't co-sign all of this, but you got it into law, not the right way, but the wrong way, and now you want us to say, well, we're here now, let's accept it. No, that's not how it's going, and the president has every right to freeze these funds. That's just like, Doc, the situation that we're in here in Illinois, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act program, who we busted out. You know, when they called me and we found out there was illegals that they've training, and yet they've gotten Black people personal identifications, hundreds of them. And J.B. Pritzker, the governor here, as much as he's already proclaimed that he's going to fight to the end for the migrants, you know, this was his way. He could use anybody's identity because he's giving them new identity. So this is all about what the Democrats and the woke generation has done, and it has truly been against the American people. But I want to play this clip, Doc, about that holding of the funding, and we're going to keep the show moving.
Yep.
Begin this hour with major moves by the White House. The Trump administration has paused all federal grants and loans. While it will not pause Social Security or Medicare benefits, there is now a temporary hold on all programs related to DEI, the Green New Deal, and foreign aid assistance. Also, the president signed 4 executive orders focused on the military, which include eliminating diversity programs and setting in motion a potential future ban on transgender troops. Separately, the acting attorney general fired more than a dozen prosecutors who worked with special counsel Jack Smith on the 2 federal prosecutions of Trump. The president touted all of his moves since taking office last night.
I've taken over 350 executive actions. We've signed 300, and who ever heard of that one? And as I said in my inaugural address, the American decline is over.
CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is following all of this.
That is getting a lot of attention this hour.
Now, Doc, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad he's doing what he's doing, especially with the military, because what people don't understand is when these individuals go into the military, they sign a contract. And
Yes.
in that contract, you have to state and affirm that you are who you say you are, according to your birth certificate. So these individuals wanting to get these transitional surgeries to become the opposite sex, they would be in violation of the contract. And that's what I really need people to understand. It's like you can't go in and be like, okay, I decided I no longer want to be a man. I want to be a woman. It's like, no, you cannot do that. You signed a contract that you are a man when you started, and that's how you finish. Now, if you want to leave the military and do that, that's totally on you. But you cannot do that while in the military because you signed a contract.
And you know what, Doc? That's the underlying truth. And that's what the president is putting forth to the American people. And he's actually showing them how DEI and how this transgender thing infiltrated these organizations, not because to protect the country, but to get these operations. And that's what this was all about. I mean, to the American people and patriots, this is what the woke generation wanted to do. They wanted to weaken our country. They wanted to indoctrinate our children to think that this is a whole nother alternative agenda. I mean, It has been against us. And we must applaud President Trump for standing and writing all of those executive orders to reverse all the bad things that happened to us, and the American people didn't even know it, Doc.
Yeah, because I forget the name of the congressman from Alabama, but before President Trump came into office, he was actually holding up a lot of the military funding because he refused to sign the bill that allowed for transgender surgeries. So everything that President Trump is doing is something that this senator actually started to, put in motion. And I know a lot of people don't like him. You know what I'm saying? He is a hard-nosed senator. Like I said, I'm losing his name right now in thought, but he did stand up and say, no, you can't do that. The American people should not be funding transgender surgeries and abortions. Also, he said, absolutely not. And I can understand where he's coming from, because these are decisions that you can make on your own outside of the military, not within the military. Now, I know that there are women in the military, obviously, who do have pregnancies. But again, this is something that you can have done. It's just not going to be covered by the military. That's the difference. But with the transgender surgeries, you can't do that. Sign a contract. Can't do that.
And that's the thing, because the transgenders now, what they do is they partner with Antifa, Black Lives Matter, which that was part of their group anyway. That was all part of the Elysian NAACP. So I'm calling these names out, the Urban League. All of these organizations, Divine Nine, also partnered with the transgender world to accept them.
Yes. Yes,
that's what this is about. That was to say, we're going to accept you So why don't we all get together and get rid of them old-fashioned fogies and push our agenda on them because they was in powerful places? And that's what Barack Obama did, and that's what President Trump is doing now. He's removing all of that from this government.
Yeah. I mean, we're behind as a society.
Yes, we are.
We're having 2.3 children per couple, and that we're way below that number. And it's unfortunately, I don't think people really see it as a genocide or a euthanasia of our country, but it is. And a lot of these individuals coming from different countries, the replacement migration, I'm really grateful that President Trump has really fought to keep the border closed and still fighting these legal challenges that these judges keep bringing up. I'm like, what judge can tell the president of the United States you can't do your job? I mean, it's literally coming down to, and it sounds ridiculous, but that's what they're doing.
Yes. And, that's the thing of it, too. He is the president of the United States of America. We voted him in to fix this country. And that's why I keep reminding the citizens of this country is how actually bad that it was. It was horrible. It caused a lot of psychological damage, especially to our children, because this is why I say those who participated in this new woke ideology, the forcing, the changing of the laws, they have come in direct violation of the Constitution of our civil rights to attack the freedom of speech, the Second Amendment. All the amendments in our Constitution was under attack by the woke ideologies and those who promoted it. And to the American people and patriots, that's what President Trump has done. He has returned us back to the place that we used to be when we did have God and we trust and all of those things. So we really have to understand now where all of this pushback is coming from, and it's coming from the left because they want us to continue down this road of wokeness.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
And Doc, we're going to have a lot of people that still has that agenda within the government. So that's why he's doing what he's doing by shutting down these grants, by removing DEI. He's making sure, and in putting these Doge audits in there, he's making sure that our money, the taxpayer dollars, are not being used unwisely to do what we've already saw what they've been trying to do with it anyway. But I'm so glad that you talked about the judges because it's sort of ridiculous, and this is to every American citizen, every taxpayer. Why would we want the continuation of our country overran with murderers, liars, thieves, gang members? I mean, you name it. Ever since that the borders have been open, the American people have suffered at the hands of violence, not only financially, but also physically with all the unsavory people and maniacs, and all of that has been put into the country by the open borders. So I don't understand this, and I'm going to play a clip on it, and so we can get some clarity on it. There's a judge who wants to bring back an MS-13 gang member to the United States. All y'all know about it, but we're going to discuss it. Let me put this out there.
Pam, I don't understand the court saying that we have to facilitate the return of a foreign gangbanger. What is that supposed to mean?
Well, Jesse, it was a win. What the court also said was that these district judges do not have the right to interfere with the executive branch's ability to conduct foreign affairs, meaning President Trump's ability to do business with foreign nations, and they can't do that. What they also said is just facilitate, meaning if he wanted a plane flight, we could give him a plane flight, but we cannot effectuate it, meaning making it happen, which is what the district court had originally ruled. It was a win. It was a win today. And Jesse, when you're listening to all these liberal reporters, they keep calling him a Maryland man. He's not a Maryland man. He's part of a foreign terrorist organization. He's a member of MS-13. Who, as you laid out in your monologue, came to this country and committed just gang acts. He was caught and he was two judges, an immigration judge and an appellate judge, ruled that he was an MS-13 member, as well as ICE's testimony. Yet his attorneys are saying he's not affiliated with the gang. They're wrong, and he has no right to be there. But for an extra step in paperwork, just like you said, he would go right back to El Salvador, which is his home country.
Your thoughts, Doc?
Look, a lot of these individuals don't want that person living in their neighborhood. They don't want that individual going to school with their children. However, it's okay if it's in another neighborhood, right? Or they're around other people. That's okay. We just want them kept here. I think it really speaks to, and this is not to be funny, Trump derangement syndrome. Because if Trump does it, then it's completely bad, and we have to do everything that's opposite. But it's like, you do realize this person murdered people, and he was allowed to come over here. The Biden administration actually paroled individuals that were here illegally.
Yes.
What are you doing? And now you have President Trump in office who's saying, no, we're not going to be a lawless country. We are a nation of laws. That person needs to be returned to their home country, which is El Salvador, and they got a great prison. Exactly. I don't know if anybody's seen the videos. They need to take a watch. But these judges are legislating from the bench. My whole thing to these judges, if you want to be a legislator, then run for office. But you're not going to rewrite legislation from the bench, which makes it precedent, and that's dangerous. Okay, we have laws in place to protect us.
And see, this is what I mean about the liberals. I just call them, they're Democrats. The Democrats is what I call them. It's sad.
It's
how many times now, you know, we got black political prisoners here in the United States of America. Larry Hoover, I would say, Jeff Ford, all of these guys who were locked up under the program, what you mean by that J. Edgar Hoover created. God, I can't see. It's like the COINTELPRO, but anyway, they were deemed as terrorists.
Right.
And so they after being deemed that way, they were put into jail on what somebody said. Now here it is. This judge has proved that this guy is an MS-13 member. They've already said it. It's also from El Salvador that he is too.
And he's committed crimes here on this soil. He was thrown into prison.
As an American, why would we want somebody in our country, Doc, that's doing this kind of stuff? Why would one American be trying to bring this guy back to the United States? For what reason? Talk about that.
Okay, so this is my own conspiracy theory. They need, and it's unfortunate, they need people here so that real patriots will stand up against them, right? And then you can declare martial law. See, right now, they can no longer play the COVID game anymore. That didn't work. People aren't going to stay home anymore. You're not going to be able to lock people down. You're not going to be able to force people to do that.
Yes.
But what you can do is you can create a civil war situation where people are fighting in the streets, right? And they're fighting for their freedoms and they're fighting for their rights. Like, how dare you not send these people back? And they'd be like, well, these aren't actual murderers, but they're still here illegally. You need to remove them. They're trying to create that scenario in that situation again by constantly having these people over here because they know, people that are ex-military, they're militia. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to put up with it. They're just going to take people out and keep it moving. But then again,
that's what they want.
That's what they want. So they can declare martial law, so they can have people locked up, so they can force people to live the way they want them to, because they have nothing else. They have nothing.
Nothing else. In the Democratic Party, when they stole that first election in 2020, Trump knew it, and a lot of us knew that they had, because there was no way that they could get that many votes for Joe. All right. It didn't even match the number of the population of the people in the country, okay? And so those numbers were upside down, but the Democrats will always do something that is wrong, and they use the courts as a protection. They know that they can use one of their judges, just like they used this judge, to say that this judge has power over the president to tell him to bring back a known gang member, child trafficker back to the United States. And for what reason?
This person has committed heinous crimes.
There's no reason
We put
for
people
it.
in jail for less.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that was my point earlier. Look at all the black men that have been locked up across the country. And you don't see one judge fighting to get them out. You don't see it, even though there's so many who are innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see not one judge, not one Democratic judge, nor Republican judge that are saying that, you know what, we done locked all these black men up and these black women up for felonious crimes, but yet nobody is crying to say, why don't you free them too? But you have the audacity to get a judge to tell the United States president to bring back
A criminal.
yes,
Literally bring back not just any criminal. Those criminals are very dangerous. You know, the MS-13 and the Trinidad gangs, they're mafia gangs. Like, they are extremely violent.
Yes, they are. And they're powerful because they control the streets. They've gotten to America and they pretty much shot their way to control neighborhoods. And the sad thing of it is they were brought here and they were put into the black community.
Yes, specifically.
So this way that they can blend in. Black people, they ain't gonna ask you no questions, but you can do whatever you want to do in our community because the police don't care about what happens in the black community. Let me play a little bit more of this here.
Ladies with baseball bats to the head. Is that legal to do? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Well, Jesse, these are Americans who he is saying who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. And crime is going to decrease dramatically because he has given us a directive to make America safe again. These people need to be locked up as long as they can, as long as the law allows. We're not going to let them go anywhere. And if we have to build more prisons in our country, we will do it.
Right. That's what I thought. And now I think someone might be visiting one of those prisons. It looks like you got one of these guys, a terrorist, and he's got some lipstick. What's that?
You know, Jesse, this guy is charged with committing the Tesla offense in New Mexico in February, and then the GOP headquarters in March. These people thought they could get away with it. They can't. This is our 5th major arrest on Tesla. I guess they are listening. They better listen. This guy is looking at 40 years in prison. I have directed my prosecutors not to make any offers. He is going away, if convicted, for 40 years. He is the 5th major arrest we've made, and stay tuned for more.
What shade of lipstick is he wearing?
It looks like a deep purple. The shade this season, though, is lavender, so he's a few shades darker.
All right.
Doc, you were just talking about the Tesla thing a couple of weeks ago, some shows ago, and how they were, so they're catching them.
Yes, and Pam Bondi had off to her. They actually were able to work it where they created I want to say they made the terrorist act a crime. So it wasn't just vandalism. It falls under a terrorist act with, per incident, 20 years. So she said he would be going away for 40 years, which means there were 2 incidents probably that they thought, that they found he was a part of. They're offering no
parole, no deals.
There's no deal. She's not offering a deal. So they're not going to be like, hey, if you do this, usually you can talk to an attorney general and come to the, like we're pleading with the court, this is the first offense, like whatever your argument is, you can plead to the court. No, they're not making any deals or offers. It's 40 years or 40 years. However you want to do it.
Federal time.
That's it.
Federal time is full time. They used to say you could get 85% of federal time, and that is no longer available on the table. You're getting 100%. And it should be, man. It shouldn't be like that. So what I want to do is I want to play a clip about the gang member, because a lot of people are feeling sympathetic. We're saying, well, he came and he was a good citizen and he was this, and his kids went to school, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're a citizen, that's what you're supposed to do. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. So I believe exactly what you said, the scenario, because it's the Democratic Party that's ushering and fighting like hell to keep these people here because they do need something. There's no more COVID. There's no more drive-up ballot boxes anymore.
No.
None of that. So, they are not able to cheat anymore about the election. So it's a lot of stuff. Yeah, let's play this clip and check it out, what President Trump
ruling
did.
that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, one of the 260 alleged gang members deported to El Salvador last month, should return to the United States or could return to the United States. Now, the administration says that he was mistakenly deported, but insists that he is a member of MS-13. He denies that. During Trump's meeting with El Salvador President Bukele earlier today, the administration was pressed about bringing him back to the United States. Watch.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Interesting answer there. Okay, with that, we bring in Borders Czar Tom Homan. Tom, welcome back. Great to have you with us today. Your thoughts on this exchange, Pam Bondi involved, President Bukele involved today in the discussion of this Maryland man.
Maryland man.
Well, I think Pam Bondi's right. He's a El Salvadorian national, born in El Salvador. He's in El Salvador's custody. So El Salvador would have to agree to release him. It doesn't sound like they're going to. And if we did get him back in the United States, he's going to be detained. He's an MS-13 gang member based on our intelligence and El Salvador's intelligence. So he's been designated terrorist, so he's going to be locked up regardless. So I agree with Pam Bondi. I think we can facilitate return if El Salvador wants to send him back, but I don't think Bukele's going to do that at all.
Yeah. This is another moment from that same meeting in the Oval Office today. President Trump asked whether he would deport non-foreign aliens, citizens in this case. So just watch this, and I'd like to get your reaction to this.
You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
Why do you think there's special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it. If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem.
Can you describe who would fall into that category and what the president was referring to there, Tom?
Martha, I don't know. I haven't had that discussion with the president. I've been on the road. I just got home like an hour ago, so I haven't had a discussion with the president or the DHS secretary, so I'm going to have to pass on that question. Okay,
that's fine. It sort of came out of nowhere, the question, so I wondered if you knew something that we didn't know on that.
Now, your thoughts on that what she asked?
Yeah, so I can kind of understand what President Trump is saying, because unfortunately they do have individuals here that when he says homegrown terrorism, right, they may get caught up with ISIS or Al Qaeda via online or other cults that are here within the United States. So dealing with someone from that respect is totally different than this person who came here illegally from another country, crossed our borders, right? So they already committed that one crime. But then when they came over here, they were a part of an actual terroristic organization that before President Trump defined them as a terrorist organization, they were just a gang. Right.
Exactly.
And so when you think of a gang, you're like, okay, you think about maybe the Bloods or the Crips or Vice Lords. If you watch that movie, The Warriors. So you think of these, a very minor, right? A minor collection of individuals that they are terrorizing people in localities, but they're not terrorizing them to the point where they're actually trying to take over towns or setting up people so they can traffic people, either human trafficking or drug trafficking, right? And so that question becomes like, well, how bad is it? how bad could it be? And it's all bad, but it's the
It
levels.
is.
If somebody's homegrown here, terrorism, you deal with it differently than you would somebody who came here illegally. And because it was allowed, it's really sad. It's almost like they diluted coming over here to become a citizen. So it's almost like, well, if we have a baby, they're a citizen, we can get whatever we want. We just have to cross your borders and we can get whatever we want. And there's no respect for
Yes.
being here in the United States. And what I'm really appreciative of is the mass migration, and deportations that are happening, because people need to realize we are a nation of laws. And if you're caught over here illegally, you're caught.
You're just
And
illegal.
and I think something happened maybe a week ago where someone picked up some individuals from Home Depot and said that they were taking them to a job. But then when they got there, they called ICE. And so all of those individuals were deported because they were here illegally. And, some people say, oh, that's messed up. No, it's not, because they shouldn't be here.
Yes.
And they shouldn't still be trying to get work here. President Trump's already put it out there. If you are here illegally, you will get deported. So yeah, they were deceived, but at the same time, you're not supposed to be here.
Exactly.
You need to leave this country. Like, I am on deportation team.
I mean, every American should be on deportation team, because that's why we are a country of structure. I mean, there's a proper way to do things, and for the Democrats who opened up the borders and allowed they knew what they were doing. This right here, let me say this, and they got sort of foiled with it. This right here was the distraction, as they were going to keep siphoning money out of the government and out of all of these programs by Tom Homan them now having to come out and come after these guys. They thought that they would still be able to conduct business as usual and keep stealing out of these programs while they chasing all these criminals around the United States trying to get them out. So the Democratic Party really got shook, because just like here in Illinois with the program, a lot of black men went to jail under the RICO Act. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Even this guy right here falls under the RICO Act here in the United States, so he'd be incarcerated anyway. But the point that I'm making is this: they continue to use these type of scenarios to be able to keep stealing. But when Trump shut down the money drains with the energy, that's what happened here in Illinois with the NGOs that stole the money from the program, that we busted them, by accident. We walked in on the Urban League and 548, the Divine Nine, Safety Foundation. All of them is involved in stealing taxpayer dollars so that they can continue to take the money and use the illegals as an excuse to do it. So, yeah, he did right by freezing the money. So the Democrats right now are pretty much scrambling on what they need to do. I'm going to play a little bit more of this tape from Tom.
This was really an important moment with the El Salvadoran president when he talked about the people that he has taken into this prison, and he gave this example. Watch.
We even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent. He said, oh, well, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6 times, so I should be released again. And then I said, well, what's the last thing you do? And he said, well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg.
That's pretty stunning admission when he says this is one of the guys that they talked to that they brought into that prison.
Well, look, I stand by the fact that every one of these people removed El Salvador is a significant public safety threat and a terrorist. I mean, MS-13 and Trent Aguas both been designated terrorists. I think Bukele's been a great partner in the United States. It's just not he's helping us with MS-13 members that MS-13 was born in that country. But MS-13 is in several different countries around the globe. And I think Bukele is stepping up to eradicate MS-13 no matter where they are. So he's going to assist the United States and get them out of here. The crime rate in El Salvador has plummeted over 90% because of President Bukele, locking up 1,000 MS-13 members. He's not going to be happy to every MS-13 member that came out of El Salvador is rounded up across the globe and sent to El Salvador. That's the type of president he is, and I got to respect that.
Talk to us a little bit about the effort to move people out of this country. Criminals first, the worst first, as you have said all along. but other people who get picked up in these efforts as well. How is it going numbers-wise? We haven't seen numbers in a while. Can you characterize the progress for us this afternoon?
Well, the interior ICE arrest numbers are about 58,000, a majority of them being criminals, according to the numbers I saw yesterday. Look, the majority is criminals, but here's what you and I talked about several times. When sanctuary cities release a criminal back into the community, that forces us to go into the community and find him. And when we find them, we normally will, many times they're with others that are in the United States illegally, but may not be a criminal public safety threat target. But we're not going to tell ICE to walk away from the illegal alien like the last administration did. The last administration told ICE you can't arrest somebody for being here illegally unless they're getting convicted of a serious crime. That's not what the law says. We're not going to tell immigration enforcement officers, you know what, ignore the oath we took, ignore the immigration law, and walk away. So I've said it many times, sanctuary cities are going to get exactly what they don't want. More agents in your community, because you're forcing us in the community, not because on the whole team to look for the bad guy. It means more collateral arrest. If they simply let us in a taxpayer-funded jail, one agent could arrest one criminal alien, but they don't do that. So that's why the collateral numbers continue to rise, because we're forcing the community.
Yeah, Tom, you've spent a lot of time, too much time, with angel moms and angel families. And you saw Rachel Moore in the beginning, and you and I talk this afternoon as this jury is about to start deliberating her suspected killer's fate. And you heard her mom, Rachel Moore, say in that soundbite, you know, if only someone had done a DNA swab on him, they would have discovered that he was wanted for murder in El Salvador and not let him go free. This is in the prior administration. Your thoughts as we wait for this jury's deliberations on this case?
Well, first of all, I met Rachel Moore several times, and it's never easy. You're right. I met too many angel moms and dads who bury their children. A preventable crime because the illegal aliens should never been there. So a heartbreaking story, every one of them. But I met Rachel Moore, and what a sweet lady, and what a tragedy she's dealing with. But you're exactly right. When I was with the Fox Network for the last 4 years, I was complaining every day that they're releasing people into this country without proper vetting. Secretary Mayorkas says, well, they're all vetted. No, they're not, because you don't have access to other countries' criminal databases. So we misled the American people, and as we see, we're arresting thousands of foreign nationals of criminal histories in other countries. Unfortunately, they get here and they commit a crime against U.S. citizens. They rape and murder young ladies. They burned a lady alive on a subway. It's just, it's just constant. But President Trump made a promise to American people: we're going to find these foreign national public safety threats and eradicate from this country. And that's exactly what we're doing. In the first 2 months, we arrested more criminal alien threats in this country in 2 months than Joe Biden did in a year. Border numbers are 95%. And ICE is out there arresting criminal aliens 24/7 across this country. And we're going to keep the president's promise to eradicate criminal aliens from this country.
Well, we don't want any more angel.
Doc, your thoughts on that, and we're going to go to our next conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad that he talked about the angel moms. You know, I definitely think about Lincoln Riley, as I spoke about a few days ago, where, he was released from New York, and then he went to Chicago, and then he ended up here in Georgia. Now, had he been deported the way he was supposed to when he committed the crime that he did, I think he murdered someone in New York, or, assaulted them. If he was deported then, Lincoln would be alive today. And a lot of people, they don't think about these individuals. They're just hopping from state to state and hiding. They need to go. And I'm so glad that Tom is also going to be deporting people who crossed here illegally. It's still a crime. I don't care. I'm glad they aren't committing more crimes here, but they committed the crime of being here illegally. They need to go back to their home country. Do it the right way. But now that you've gotten caught by ICE, you have no chance to come back over here legally now. You're done. You're done.
Well, we put it out there for the American people so they can understand exactly, and we explain to them so that they can see. We can see that this inner war that's going on with the Democratic Party against the American people is finally being played out, and the American people can see what party actually continues to try to fight for these people, opposed to they should be on the bandwagon with the president saying, we want them out. I don't think no American citizen in these democratic cities, I know, especially here in Chicago, we don't want illegals here.
No.
We don't want them here. We don't want them taking the resources. Now we know that America got resources to take care of their communities like they should. Then we want to make sure the Black Americans now tap into those resources that they can't deny anymore and say, well, we don't have a way to distribute reparations. Yes, you can.
Yes,
because if you distribute American dollars to every illegal that put his foot in this country, if you were able to get dollars like that, then you can find dollars to pay the Black race and the Black communities reparations for all the damage that was done to us as a people since we've been in this country. And I think that is one of the biggest problems that we see is how do we do it? That's what everybody was saying. Yeah, it was wrong for what happened, but how do we pay Black people?
Well, you've already seen the way they were able to do it for the illegals. That's what you do. You give people 0% down and, you know, very low interest rates in housing. That's what you do. You know, you don't have to give somebody $5,000 a month in, you know, EBT, you know, cash aid or $11,000 in food stamps. But what you could do is you could actually use some of that money for education, for housing programs, to make sure that people are educated and off of the streets. That's what you could do and stop making excuses.
And you know, that's what they did. And also a lot of programs, just like the housing program here in the United States, that need to be totally overhauled.
Yes.
Because why would you put somebody in a program like Section 8? All these Black people like, I don't want to mess my Section 8 up. You know what?
Right.
Why would you create a program like Section 8 that allows landlords that could be slumlords to get a check off you every month and does not take care of their buildings? You know, those programs need to be redefined. They need to be put into the perspective as to the same way you've been giving the migrants houses, you need to be giving American citizens houses the same way, Doc.
Right. And actually having people look towards home ownership, even if that's owning a condo. So say, for example, you get a voucher, but you know, in 2 years, you have to be responsible to transition that voucher and actually take over the payment of that condominium, let's just say, and actually have payments until you own it. Right.
Exactly.
We need to get back into ownership and get out of this renter mentality. And because of the renter mentality, to your point, slumlords have been able to take advantage of the HUD program as opposed to actually helping people, give them a hand up so they can have a long-term home to live in and not just an apartment.
Well, you know, Doc, you said something that was very beneficial a few minutes ago. You start talking about ownership. And I think that's what we're going to try to do here. I'm not going to say we'll try to do it. We are going to do it here. It's about educating people about their surroundings.
Yeah.
You know, I spoke with some gentlemen from the Leadership Institute last week, and they're looking to train how to become leaders. They're looking to train on understanding the economy. They're looking to train about financial worth. So we're going to partner with them as we spoke last weekend. We're going to start offering these courses in the Black community: home ownership, financial literacy. It won't cost you nothing. All you have to do is show up and learn these type of things, learn about the social justice system. And that's what's missing with the children today, is they do not know how this world functions, nor do they know how it operates. And I think it's important that, especially in the Black community, we need to know that we can buy the corner store, and with the city block grant funds, that we can open a business. See, we have to start teaching those things, and that's what the politicians' responsibilities are, is to be able to teach those things in the community. Instead of the aldermen just sitting there not doing nothing but getting a paycheck, they should be opening up all sorts of different training programs on how to be an alderman, how to be in trades. So those things need to be done. But
see, they're paid to be still. They're paid to not educate. That's the problem. They're actually paid to do the reverse of what they need to be doing.
Exactly. And that's why the voting process coming up in 2027, the city of Chicago will be cleaned out. All of those aldermen, I'm going to take the mayor's seat from Brandon Johnson. That's not going to be hard. We've already started the campaign to do that. So, yeah, it's time for the American people and patriots across this country to get this country back to square one, where we can be prosperous again, where, even the school system is so screwed up, we're not training good adults anymore. And in saying that, Doc, I know we talked a little bit earlier. I want to touch on a situation that happened out in Texas. The stabbing of a young athlete is always sad. And when I looked at this case, I'm going to play a clip that we got. I looked at this case. At first, I was outraged. I was truly, truly outraged because, I saw a twin who was a good athlete. And this is why I say we have to be careful. We have to be very careful on how we examine things and some of the things that we say regarding this, because this was a young black man who stabbed a young white man. They both are athletes, okay?
Yeah.
And so you can look at it on the surface and say, yeah, the black man killed the white kid, blah, 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 and he should be strung up. He should be in jail. He shouldn't get out of jail and all of that. But when you take a closer look at things, and this is why I love this country, the justice system, if it is used properly, can distinguish what actually happened. And that's what we need to know, what happened. This situation with Carmelo Anthony down there, that's a professional name. There's a professional basketball player named Carmelo Anthony. So I'm wondering if this is maybe part of their family or what. But there's three athletes really, that's involved. There was a set of twins, and there was this black child, Carmelo Anthony. There had been friction between them, and people want to say, well, he just killed him for no reason. It doesn't happen like that. And from what I gathered, that these two young athletes who were twins were bullying. As we know, that happens all the time with our high school kids when they're not learning science and math.
Yeah,
they're doing things that they won't do around the parents. I did things that I would never do around my parents. I won't even say it, and they did. But you suffer consequences for the actions that you take and the actions that you make. And I think that to the American people and patriots across this country, we need to wait until this whole thing unfolds, because they were minors, and we need to know why this happened. Let me grab this video right quick, Doc. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's sad. I know we had talked offline earlier, and when I initially saw it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back, because this is something you get very heightened emotionally, and you want to see, well, this happened or that happened. I was like, And then as it started unfolding, I was like, okay, it looks like there's been some history between these two because of what was said, what the black young man said to the white young man when they were under the tent. Further circumstances for that, people were like, well, why wasn't he under his own tent? Well, it was raining, and the coaches and other people said, run under a tent, and he ran under a tent. Did he do it intentionally? Did he not? What I'm saying? There's just so many circumstances as to how we got here.
Well, my thing is this. We have to take a look at, just like all of the stuff that Trump is doing, and he's trying to unite us as a country again.
Yes.
And these type of situations that happen, and they happen for a couple of reasons. I'm going to play this clip right quick.
The past hour, 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony has been released from the Collin County Jail after posting bond. A judge reduced his bond this morning from $1 million to $250,000. He's facing a murder charge after police say he stabbed another teenager, Austin Metcalf, while at a track meet at a Frisco high school. Stephen Dial is in McKinney with more. Stephen.
Carmelo Anthony left the Collin County Jail in a suit, but had nothing to say to the reporters before he got into that vehicle. The district court judge says that she looked at all the factors in this case, him not having a criminal history, and that led to her making her decision to reduce his bond. 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony was silent after bonding out of the Collin County Jail and being placed on house arrest.
How is this self-defense?
2 days after the family of Austin Metcalf buried their son, they were at the Collin County Courthouse for a bond reduction hearing Monday. Carmelo Anthony is accused of stabbing and killing Metcalf at a Frisco track meet earlier this month. The case has quickly become national news, drawing a lot of attention, resulting in threats and increased security at the courthouse.
Threats and, talk of race war and all kinds of insanity isn't good for, obviously, the Anthony family. It's not good for the Metcalf family.
Cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom, but we did capture the Anthony family arriving. His father, Andrew, testified in the hearing. District Court Judge Angela Tucker said that she's never gotten this volume of calls and had to have this level of security in the courtroom in her 13 years on the bench. Court documents say Anthony stabbed Metcalf during a fight. When an officer arrived, court documents say Anthony told the officer, "I was protecting myself." Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis spoke after the hearing.
The judge has made the call, and so what's important is what's next. And it's our job to be level-headed, to be fact-based, and to follow the truth wherever it leads.
Anthony's father testified he's taking a leave from work because of the incident, and his wife is a stay-at-home mother with 3 other children. During the hearing, the prosecution brought up the fact that more than $400,000 have been raised for the Anthony family, saying a reduction is not needed because they have the funds. A big question in this case will be, why did Anthony bring a weapon to a high school stadium? It's a question that was asked of his attorney.
That's an understandable question, but it's not something that, frankly, we're prepared to even go into.
Now, in the opening statement to the media from that interview that you just heard, he led with talking about self-defense. Again, the court documents mention self-defense. We'll have to wait and see how that defense will be made in court when things pan out. Now, according to the judge, the terms of the bond are house arrest and ankle monitor. She told him to stay off social media, and he has to personally call her bailiff every Friday morning, not his parents, but him. And there's a list of other things that is set. And if he violates that, he'll return to the Collin County Jail.
Your thoughts, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the judge stepped in and intervened, did what she did, because $1 million was excessive, being that it was a first offense, being that he turned himself in. He did not run from the scene of the crime. So he admitted to what he did, but that does not necessarily make him a stone cold killer, right? Because he has priors. So there's that evidence. There's also the fact that, and I've listened to some spaces and they read the actual police report. You can have a knife under so many inches on your person in the state of Texas. So he wasn't in violation of having a knife to protect himself. The question is, why did he think he needed it? Exactly. And I don't think that's the question anybody's asking. Everybody's all like, he did this, he did that, but why did he feel the need to have the knife in the first place? Right.
Well, I was doing some research on it myself this morning, and I looked at it. And the more I look at some of the comments that was made on social media, because a lot of the children, and this is why they confiscated all of their phones, and they're going into the record. A lot of the children who were victim of the 2 young brothers who were white, they were bullying on a lot of other kids in the school as well. Okay. And so they've been talking about how that these 2 had jumped on him before.
Okay.
See, so we have to start looking at why he was carrying the knife. He was carrying the knife because he had already been beat up by the twins, one of which he stabbed.
Okay.
And so,
like I said, there's a why.
It's a lot of a lot of questions to be answered. And then you're talking about, if he was on the track team, he was supposed to be at the track meet, the young black man. Okay. Yes. The other 2 could be at the track meet as well. How they ended up under this tent together, we don't know. It could have been intentional. It could not have been intentional. This could have been another scenario. And And for him to have a knife, that shows that it's fear. That's fear.
Yeah.
That's scared.
Right.
And so it's a lot of things that are going to have to be answered. There's going to be a lot of witnesses in this case. And to the American people of patriots across this country, let us not rush to judge what happened in this incident.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let us not rush to judge. Let us see what the evidence produces, because we need to see that. Because it's just simple, Doc. The Bible says, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Your last words.
Yeah. And, also taking into account the statement that the father made, he's actually forgiven Carmelo for his actions. He was like, we're going to get through this. We're going to work through this. And he also brought up the fact that, we don't need this to turn into a racial issue.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
These are two young men that unfortunately a situation became combative, and it did not turn out well. I'm really praying for the Metcalf family. They lost their son.
Yes.
There was a life lost in this.
Yes.
But when we have matters of racial intensity, especially in this country, it goes to the extreme. Again, they want something for people to get upset about, to go out into the streets about and march about. And what some people call them the summers of love, where people literally burn down cities because of events like this. And I just want to encourage people, do not do that. That is not going to bring this young man back. That is not going to get this other young man out of jail, and cities being turned up and billions of dollars later. Let's not.
Well, and you're so correct, Doc, because that's something that we really have to pay close attention to. And I would say it's part of society's fault. It's part of the justice system fault. And it's part of the parents' fault. And really, it starts with the parents at home on how you raise your children. Your last words, Doc.
Yes, but with everything that's happening, as it does say in the book of Luke, when you see all of these things occurring, look up, for your redemption is drawing near. And please check out the Redemption Party at usaredemptionparty.com. We are looking for candidates to be servants of the people, not politicians. And we also need members of our party to help organize around this great country that we have, to get into those local positions like mayor, council, commissioners, aldermen as well. And again, check out usaredemptionparty.com.
Thank you, Doc. And we'll be talking soon. You have a great evening. Folks, I want to thank you for tuning in to the show. Like I said, this last segment that we did is close to a lot of parents, because when we send our kids to school, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what type of attitude that they're going to have. We don't know what type of influences that they're receiving when they're not with their parents. So I urge the American people that this incident that has happened, let's not make this into a racial incident. This could happen with anybody's kid. It doesn't just have to be a black and a white kid, but it happens on black, white on white. Let's not this incident, and let's rush to judgment on what we should be doing before we get the facts. And in saying that, folks, I enjoyed you. Thanks. Tune in, share it around. And remember, let the truth be told, let the truth be told. I'd rather for you to hurt me with the truth than comfort me with a lie. I'll see you tomorrow.